Story 1. Years ago, back when Uncle Dale and Dad were university students, their engineering professor came to their class with a problem that needed solving. His mailbox was getting broken by someone driving by every night. He and his wife had put up something like 4 or 5 mailboxes, and all 4 or 5 times, the mailbox had been knocked over by someone driving a red truck. This professor offered extra credit to any group of students who could come up with a truck-proof mailbox that not only fit with city regulations, but within a budget of $20, which back then was a good-sized chunk of change. Well, if anyone here knows anything about engineers, as Dad puts it, they love solving problems. And if it's engineering students, they'll make it an experience to remember. Dad and Uncle Dale got together and got to work. They found a steel bar that fit within mailbox regulations. Posts have to be a specific height, width, and depth, and filled the inside with a mixture of concrete and steel rebars. Once the concrete had healed, they welded 8 rebars to the sides of the bar, bent them in half, and stuck it inside a bucket. To add extra weight, they filled the bucket with the heaviest rocks they could find. As a finishing touch, they painted it brown and black to look like wood and put the ugliest mailbox we could find on sale on top, welding it down for good measure. They brought this monstrosity into class, Moore dragged it because it was so heavy, and told the professor to bury the bucket where the mailbox stood. Since they were the first to turn in their project, the professor agreed to give it a try. That night, the professor and his wife were awoken by a metallic bang, followed by a lot of cursing. They went outside, and wouldn't you know it, there was that red truck speeding away, the mailbox still standing. At the base was a broken wooden baseball bat. 2 days later, the professor gets a bill in the mail for a hospital visit. Turns out when the passenger hit the mailbox, he did some serious damage to his arm and shoulder. They were planning on suing the professor, but the professor hired a lawyer who basically told the plaintiffs, "You're just going to admit that you were vandalizing the mailbox multiple times." That shut them up. To the best of my dad's knowledge, the mailbox is still standing. The other students who still brought in mailboxes had theirs gifted to different professors throughout the town and are also still standing. Story 2. A little background. I have an almost 2-year-old who is a bit of a finicky eater, as many kids that age are. There's one brand of little, blueberry-flavored, heart-shaped rice puffs that he absolutely loves, and we use them as rewards for when he accomplishes something, like successfully using the potty or putting away his toys. Sometimes we also give them to him just because we love him. He calls them puffs and practically chants it when he knows he's about to get some. It's pretty adorable, but I digress. Now, I'm a 6'3" man and very broad-shouldered. I'm a pretty calm, pleasant person most of the time and try to make friends with everyone I meet, but I've been told that I'm intimidating just because of my size. I'm aware of this and try not to loom over people or throw my weight around, but sometimes people get skittish just because I'm there. So, anyway, I'm at the major chain grocery store after work picking up a few things that my wife asked me to grab on the way home. I remember that we're low on puffs and swing by the baby aisle to get some, even though my wife didn't ask for them specifically. Lo and behold, there's Karen in her smart business casual jacket with her overloaded cart standing right in front of the puffs. She's holding a box of baby oatmeal, reading the back of it. I calmly watch as she puts the box back, picks up another box of the same brand of the same powdered oatmeal, just a different size, and starts reading that. Again, I wait, but I'm standing there wondering what could possibly be different between the two. She then picks up the first box and starts comparing them. They're identical other than box size, and I'm tired of waiting for her. It's only been 2 or 3 minutes, which isn't that long, but I'm ready to get home to see my kid. So I say, "Excuse me, ma'am, could I?" "Karen," without looking up, "I don't work here." "Right, could I please?" I said I don't effing work here, except she says the word as she glares death at me. Yeah, I get that. I just need. Get away from me. Just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm going to help some idiot man buy baby stuff. Look, I just want that cereal, I say as I point at the puffs on the shelf. Don't touch me. I said I don't work here. Manager. I need a manager. Now, there was a nice older lady stocking shelves at the other end of the aisle. I've talked to her a few times over the past few months. She's always been really sweet and always tells me all about her grandson, who coincidentally has the same first and middle name that I do. She knows me, so I'm not worried when she heads over. She's not a manager, but being older, a lot of people assume she is. I'll call her Worker. Worker, is there a problem here? Karen, this man is harassing me. I sigh. I just wanted to. I don't care what you want, I won't be bullied. Turning to the Worker, I demand you have him thrown out. I won't put up with this. Ma'am, can we please calm down? I'd like to. Don't you tell me to calm down. He's the problem. To me, I said I don't work here, EFF. Ma'am, I can't help you if you don't calm down. Please, can. She turns her hands palms up in a pretty universal non-threatening position. Don't you touch me. I'll call corporate. What's your name? I've been pretty irritated, but I haven't gotten mad until now. I worked customer service for a lot of years and I'm used to being treated poorly by seemingly insane people, so I've been trying to remain calm. Once she threatens to report the sweet old lady for just trying to defuse the situation, I get angry. Standing up straight, looming forward just slightly, and with my best semi-loud dad voice that I usually reserve for when my kid is about to do something that's gonna get him seriously hurt, I say. Lady, I just wanted to buy that cereal for my kid, and your cart is in the way. I know you don't work here. I'm not an idiot. I was just trying to ask if I could reach past you to get it. Karen goes completely pale and frankly looks like she's about to wet herself. She silently grabs her cart and scoots it back 2 or 3 feet. I smile and say in as calm and friendly of a manner as I can manage, "Thank you, ma'am." I grab the puffs, put them in my cart, and walk away. Me. Have a nice evening. A few seconds of silence pass as I walk towards the registers, before I hear the Worker say, "Ma'am, if you still need that number for corporate, I can get that for you." Story 3. This takes place when I was 17, fairly certain it was 2014, during my second year of what probably would be called high school in the US. It's called gymnasium in Swedish. Long backstory incoming. My school was very closely located to a sports arena made for floorball, so during my PE, we played a lot of floorball. Once a year, we would have a fairly large tournament with some other high schools in the area. It was not mandatory, but my school always had at least 2 teams. This took place during a school day, so if you attended you could skip a day of regular classes, which many students didn't consider worth it. My school was specialized in IT and mathematics, so lots of people who would probably be considered nerds. But since I was an active floorball player in my free time, this was a win-win and I would always attend. People of interest. Me, injured classmate, unhelpful teacher, entitled mother and entitled mother's child. The kid wasn't really entitled. This year, however, I was going as a spectator because we didn't have enough players for a third team. And I didn't want to take a spot from the younger players in either team. So I enjoyed myself and just cheered on. During one of the matches, a girl, my injured classmate, who was in my class, had a really bad fall, really twisting her ankle and landing on her foot. The game was suspended, and I was waiting for someone to step in and help her, but nobody came. Turns out that the school forgot to bring in a medic or even a PE teacher to have on standby in case someone got hurt. I looked around and nobody was getting up to help her, so I grabbed a teacher sitting near me, the useless teacher, and told her to get whatever medical equipment she could find. I ran out to my classmate and tried to help her off the field. She could barely walk, so I supported her with my shoulder since I didn't want to carry her, me not knowing her and all. We get to the stands, where I gently help her lay on her back so I could have a look at her foot. The useless teacher comes back with some elastic bandages, Google Translate to the rescue, and I proceed to remove her shoe. She yells out in pain, which in a second just goes quiet. She passed out from the pain. While she was out, I managed to get the sock off and everything was just swollen, and the ankle was at a really weird angle. She comes to her senses and I grab the bandage and tell her, "This is really going to hurt." While I was bandaging the ankle and foot, she was just holding the useless teacher's hand and cried. I got her foot immobilized with the bandage, and the useless teacher said, "Oh, should she stay here or should she go to the hospital?" I glared at her and said that she was going to the hospital. The useless teacher said, "I can't leave right now, but I'll get someone to drop her off at the emergency room." I looked my classmate in the eyes, saw her fear, and just said, "The emergency room will be full at this time. Drive us to the clinic downtown. They have a small emergency room section, but it won't take as long." We were driven to the clinic, and I helped her inside the building. Turns out that the ER was on the top floor, 5 narrow staircases up, and naturally the lift wasn't working. With the bandage on, she could put some weight on it, but not nearly enough to walk up the stairs, and since the stairs were so narrow, I couldn't walk next to her and support her. I gathered some courage in my 17-year-old insecure brain and told my classmate, "I'm going to carry you up the stairs, okay?" She looked a bit embarrassed but nodded. Here comes the entrance of the entitled mother and her kid. While I was lifting her up the 3rd set of stairs, I felt a push on my back, almost making me fall. I stop and turn around just in time to see the entitled mother try to push me again, apparently trying to get past me, way too narrow for me to let her pass while carrying my classmate. "Me, what are you doing?" "Entitled mother, we don't got all day. My son slipped and hurt his wrist." I see him behind her with a wrapped wrist, and he's trying very hard to not look in my direction. My classmate turns her head into my chest while crying. I guess that the push must have put pressure on her foot. Me, "Well, wait for 3 freaking minutes so I can get her up to the ER. Then you can pass." The entitled mother doesn't say anything, but is constantly at my heels, almost making me fall again. We get up the stairs, and the entitled mother shoves me aside, walking into the ER. I follow her inside, where she drags her kid towards the check-in area, probably thinking that I'd be trying to get my classmate registered first. I instead find 2 of the few unused chairs and make a makeshift bed, making sure her ankle is elevated before going to get her registered. I go in as soon as the entitled mother walks out, looking really smug, probably thinking that now I'll have to wait even longer. I register my classmate, tell them about her pain, and that I suspect a broken ankle. But before we were done, I heard my classmate scream for help, and I darted out of the room. The entitled mother is trying to drag her out of the chairs. I run up to her and firmly push her backwards, carrying an extra bit of momentum, just for good measure, and ask what she was doing. She's taking up 2 chairs. My kid and I both need a chair, and since we were here first, these ones are ours. I didn't notice, but I had a nurse and a doctor behind me that ran over when my classmate screamed. They brought a stretcher with them that they immediately lifted my classmate onto. I turn and see them helping, then turn back to the entitled mother, where I'm just standing. Not sure what to do with my anger, I just wait for her to act first. When they start rolling her to a room, the entitled mother yells, "Hey, we were." I cut her off mid-scream, just telling her to shut up. I try to walk to the room, but I'm stopped by a nurse saying that I can't go in since I'm not family, guessing it was because she saw me and the entitled mother fighting and didn't want to drag it into the room. I just stand there for a while, and eventually the kid gets attended to. His mother wasn't allowed in either. We just stood there and looked at each other until my classmate's dad arrived. In the confusion of it all, I had totally forgotten to call her parents, but apparently the useless teacher did before we left. I exchange a few words with him, then I leave, giving the entitled mother the finger while leaving. Post-story, my classmate had 2 fractures and was using crutches for a while, but was eventually okay. Never saw the entitled mother again. No police were involved. I made sure to point out that every game needs a medic. Story 4. Karen called the cops on my service dog and accused me of being too young to be disabled again. So, I saw that woman with her child again, this time at Walmart, while I was grocery shopping. I made the mistake of ignoring my dog when she was alerting me to my heart rate. I genuinely thought she just wanted the sandwich I was eating. I was completely wrong. I ended up feeling really dizzy and out of breath, and had to sit down in the corner of the store while she performed deep pressure therapy. I must have been on the floor for about 10 minutes. During that time, a Walmart staff member came over to check on me and asked if I was all right. They even gave me a free bottle of water, which I truly appreciated. Anyway, while I was still sitting there, the same child saw me from a distance and had another meltdown. The child's mother had already explained to me last time that her daughter had autism. She was screaming and crying because my dog was there, and she was absolutely terrified. I can understand why she might be scared. My dog is not small by any means. She's a 115-pound female cane corso. Aside from being trained to alert and respond, she also assists with mobility. Her breed isn't typically used as a service dog, but she turned out to be a natural. I originally got her as a pet, but she became the service dog I needed. She is truly the best girl. This woman did not leave the store with her child, who was having a meltdown. Instead, she made the outrageous decision to call emergency services on me. Eventually, the authorities arrived, and she started shouting that I was faking having a disability because I was too young to actually be disabled. She claimed it was illegal for me to have my service dog anywhere near food indoors, and even said that people like me were the reason she had to deal with lockdowns. I am Asian. She went as far as saying that the least I could do was be considerate and stay home, away from everyone, and keep my dog at home where she belonged. My dog was very clearly vested, with tags stating that she was a service dog. I showed the officers the medical note I always carry, which states that I require a service dog. In the end, the store manager banned the woman from shopping at that Walmart for a year. The authorities only gave her a warning for wasting their time and then escorted her off the property. Story 5. Now this happened a few years ago, so nothing is verbatim. Boring backstory time. I work a 24/7 roster in healthcare in a medium-sized hospital. This particular year, the flu shot, everyone missed the big one. As a result, everybody had the flu. Staff was dropping like flies either from having the flu or looking after kids with a flu. Our department was running lean on staff already, so this wiped us out. As a dude with no kids who wasn't dying a slow sniffle death, I was suddenly in high demand to cover all the shifts. This resulted in a solid 21-day period of covering all the overnights, 10-hour shifts, with the minimum required rest periods. It sounds bad, but honestly it wasn't too terrible. Lot of flu patients in beds don't really require my department too frequently, so I made lots of overtime without being worked to death. But that last week, the flu finally caught up with me. The symptoms were pretty mild though up until my last overnight. Suddenly, all my symptoms were dialed right up. Mild sniffles and sore throat to hacking cough, fevers, blocked sinuses, and vomiting for the last 4 hours of my last shift. Joy. One of the emergency department doctors was nice enough to check me out and diagnose the flu with an added bonus of a bacterial sinus and chest infection. He wrote me a very generous sick note and sent me on my way with a prescription for antibiotics for the chest infection. So off I go to the nearest pharmacy before running home and hiding from the world for 72 hours. So there I am waiting for my meds to be filled, aimlessly walking the aisles. If I sat down, I was going to go to sleep, with my trusty basket that is slowly filling with purchases one makes when sleep-deprived and ill. Lozenges, nasal spray, those diabetic jelly beans, why not? And of course, a bulk mix pack of Band-Aids cause the 500 I have under the sink might not be enough. But then I see them. My girlfriend's brand of Femini products are on special. The girlfriend I haven't seen properly in 3 weeks. Boyfriend points could be earned here. I mean, what girl doesn't see the romance in a 12 packs of pads? I'm scooping those suckers off the shelf like a madman, a row at a time. But in my exuberance, I accidentally knocked some of the wrong sort of products onto the ground. Anyhow, I bend over and start returning the dropped products to the display when I feel a sharp jab to my shoulder. I'm a bit startled, with my face so gummed up my hearing is shot, and I didn't even hear anyone approaching. I come up, pad still in hand, and turn to face an old lady in her, I guess, early 70s. Conversation not verbatim, as this was years ago. Old lady, excuse me, but I need help finding product X. Shuffling to the side a bit, so I'm not taking up the whole aisle, I reply, sorry, I haven't seen any of that. A bit huffy, she goes, well, do you think you could look for it? I was still not getting it. No, I mean I'm just here putting these products away. You could try finding someone that works here, I'm just shopping. Now she looks pointedly at the products still in my hands, my hospital lanyard hanging around my neck, and my Noah's Ark-like basket of goodies. Then she abruptly turns around and walks away. I just sort of shrug and go back to putting back the wrong products. Thanks to a coughing fit, I'm still doing just that when the old lady returns with a man in his 40s. The man, are you the guy who refused to help my mother? I finally finish putting those freaking products away and turn and face him. The old lady is standing a little behind him with a decidedly smug look on her face. Me. Look guys, I honestly don't know where your desired product is. I'm just here for my meds and doing a little shopping. The man shakes his head a bit and then gets right into my personal space. The old lady shuffles forward with him, so now we're all way too close for comfort in this cramped aisle. Look son, it's one thing to be lazy, but don't be stupid too. If you're gonna slack off, at least take off the evidence. And with that, he reached out and grabbed my lanyard with a hard yank. Now my fellow hospital peeps will be aware that we wear breakaway lanyards, so that patients can't strangle us. So I think maybe he was trying to give me a jolt. Gotta get those lazy Gen Y people to pay attention, don't you know? But all he ended up with was my hospital ID. Now at this point I'm getting angry. Certain swear words are about to get spoken. But abruptly my body lets me know I'm gonna sneeze. Like the good hospital pleb I am, my arm comes up so I can sneeze into my elbow. The man, still confused by the breakaway lanyard, sees this and thinks I'm throwing the world's worst punch. He grabs my arm with his left hand. We share a brief look of confusion before my eyes start to cross. Now here is where my bag of cares, which is already depleted by weeks without a break, runs completely dry. I don't turn away like a polite person would. Nope, I take aim. The sneeze is a big one. I spray the man with snot and saliva. The first salvo of sinus infection green paints his face, the second his coat. He lets go of my arm and I kinda swivel, so the third blast catches the old lady a glancing blow. I come out of the head rush you get after sneezing to see the man dry retching. Pretty sure some got in his mouth. And the old lady just sort of staring at me with her mouth doing that goldfish thing. My ID is on the floor. The man must have dropped it. So I grab it, grab my basket, and push past them while they're still reeling from my biological attack. Me? I already told you, I don't work here. I just have the flu. What kind of jerks harass someone with the flu? And with that, I bravely hid right next to the pharmacy desk until my prescription was filled. I really hope they enjoyed that flu season just as much as I did. And hey, at least I didn't puke on them, right? Story 6. My dad has a longtime girlfriend whom I call Big Peach, named for her fake tan, pink hair, and general resemblance to the fruit. She's awful. My siblings and I can't stand her, and frankly, the feeling is mutual. She lies, manipulates, and disregards boundaries, all while keeping up this fake, overly sweet, I'm not trying to be a bother, but act. It's a very, very long story. A lot of it is in my post history if you want the details, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you're really looking for some extensive reading. 6 years in, she's still pulling her stunts and getting away with them. I've come to accept that, for some reason, my dad is happy with her, and I've found ways to see him without having to deal with her. But this series of events was just too much. I was fed up. This was the final straw for my sisters and me. My dad was helping a friend do some work on a roof when he fell. The scaffolding broke underneath him, and he dropped 2 stories. An ambulance was called, and his friend accompanied him to the hospital. For some reason, the first person he called was Big Peach. She's been causing trouble ever since. He apparently feels terrible both about the accident and about the ongoing family drama. For the first couple of days, we had very little information. Big Peach kept as much from us as she could. She only contacted my youngest sister about what happened, completely downplaying everything. My sister explained that Big Peach had told her dad had broken his shoulder in a fall, but it wasn't serious. She insisted there was nothing we could do, told us not to bother coming to the hospital, and casually mentioned that she had his phone, so don't bother calling him either. Also, she made sure to pass along the message that he wouldn't be coming home anytime soon. I live with my dad, but my sisters do not. My youngest sister was really alarmed by that last part. She kept asking when Dad would get his phone back and for the number of the hospital ward he was staying in. Big Peach refused to give her any of it, repeatedly insisting, "He's fine. He'll be home by Monday." That response wasn't good enough, so my sister created a WhatsApp group with me and our middle sister, so we could all try to get some real information out of her. Big Peach couldn't keep up her act in front of all of us. Eventually, she caved and gave us the name of the hospital and the ward he was in. Oh yeah, he was probably getting emergency surgery because he had broken a lot more than just his shoulder. He had been admitted on Saturday, but we only got this information on Monday. If we weren't already panicking, we definitely were now. We arranged for the three of us to visit on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Big Peach kept messaging us, trying to control when and how we could see him. She insisted on dictating how many of us could visit, when we could go, because she was planning to be there at a certain time. So obviously, we couldn't go then, and continued feeding us lies. She claimed she had tried calling my youngest sister on Saturday night, but my sister had no missed calls from that time. She also claimed she had come to the house that night to get some of my dad's things, but I had bolted the door, and Saint Big Peach didn't want to wake me. That part was definitely a lie. I always bolt the door when I'm home alone, and that night I was awake most of the time, worried sick. My bedroom is right across from the front door, and I never heard a car or a single sound. Also, our dog goes absolutely wild whenever she hears cars outside, as dogs do, but she was completely silent all night. But sure, Big Peach was totally there. Then there were my grandparents. I called them to check in before we left for the hospital on Tuesday, and guess what? No one had told them. Big Peach had gone in person that morning, full of tears, needing them to comfort her. She had told us on Saturday that my grandparents already knew and weren't going to visit Dad because it's just a broken shoulder, so we shouldn't bother either. More lies. I found this out while talking to them on the phone, and naturally, they were furious. They immediately got in their car to head to the hospital at the same time as us. My grandfather explained that he had actually called Big Peach on Saturday, just a casual check-in to ask how things were going. She told him she and Dad were at home, just watching TV. She claimed she hadn't wanted to worry them, that they deserved to be told in person because she was just that thoughtful, and she gave the impression that we all already knew what was going on. My grandparents were upset that none of us had reached out to tell them, but I explained that Big Peach had led us to believe they had already been informed. I told them we would meet them at the hospital and share everything we knew. When we arrived, we saw that Dad was in much worse shape than we had imagined. His head was covered in cuts, he had a black eye, and he could barely move from the pain. No exaggeration, he looked lifeless when we walked in. I had brought a bag of things from home, and my sisters brought food and drinks, but none of it was useful to him in that state. He couldn't read, eat, or even drink without assistance. It was terrifying to see. He had fallen off roofs and gotten hurt before, but he had never been left in this condition. The paramedics and his friend who had been with him thought he was either dead or wasn't going to survive the ambulance ride because he was unconscious for so long. When we finally got to talk to him, he told us what had happened, and we realized how little he actually knew about the situation. He just knew he was in the hospital and needed surgery. He had no idea that Big Peach had taken his phone, and that fact seemed to genuinely alarm him. He also didn't know that his family had been left in the dark until that morning. He wasn't even sure why Big Peach was handling everything. I am listed as his emergency contact, not her. That little detail made all of us even more uneasy. When my grandparents arrived, they had managed to calm down a bit, focusing only on seeing my dad. There was a rule about the number of visitors allowed by the bed, so I swapped places with my grandmother, who was the most anxious to talk to him. In the hallway, my grandfather took me aside and pleaded with me not to be angry with Big Peach. He admitted she had been incredibly foolish this entire time, but he pointed out that she made my dad happy and asked me to let it go for his sake. He and my grandmother didn't like her either, but they still tolerated her for the sake of keeping the peace. I made no promises. I told him that I couldn't forgive her for this, but I would try not to start any fights with her because there was already enough stress. All in all, it was a quiet visit. That visit, anyway. Every time one of us tried to visit after that, no matter the time of day, Big Peach was there, and she was mad. She did not like the fact that anyone other than her was visiting Dad in the hospital. We got the impression that she was trying to play the role of the loving, devoted girlfriend, but she hated that there were other people who genuinely cared about him and wanted to help. It ruined her fantasy. She wanted to be the sole caretaker, the one person he relied on, and she resented anyone else stepping in. My middle sister had a theory that she might have some form of Munchausen syndrome. Big Peach had been lying for years about studying to be a nurse, and a while back, she had done something similar when her own mother needed help after a hip replacement. That time, however, she barely lasted a week before she got fed up. She couldn't stand having to bring food to her mother in bed or help her get to the bathroom, things you would expect someone in that condition to need help with. So she sent her mother off to live with her sister because, in her words, she wouldn't stand being treated like a servant. But instead of just adjusting how she did things, she gave up entirely. After she left, things got a lot easier. My sisters and I handled everything ourselves, and despite how exhausted we were, we at least knew Dad was actually being taken care of. He wasn't being dragged up and down the stairs at random. Meals were actually edible, and if he needed something, he wasn't being ignored in favor of whatever was on television. Dad, for his part, didn't say much about her sudden departure. He seemed relieved, to be honest. He finally got some real rest without her constantly hovering or insisting on things that made him uncomfortable. He was still in a lot of pain, but at least he wasn't being pushed past his limits. One of the last things Big Peach did before leaving was try to make herself the victim. She sent my dad a long message about how hard she had tried, how much she had sacrificed, and how ungrateful we all were. She claimed she had taken time off work to take care of him, and none of us appreciated her efforts. I highly doubt she took any time off, considering she spent most of the week sitting in front of the television and ignoring him when he actually needed help. Dad didn't respond to the message, at least not that I know of. I certainly wasn't going to entertain her nonsense. My sisters and I had done more for him in those few days than she had in the entire time he was in the hospital. Once Dad was well enough to move around more easily, I finally got a chance to sit down and talk with him properly. He admitted that he hadn't realized how much Big Peach had kept from him while he was in the hospital. He hadn't known we weren't being given updates, that she was blocking us from visiting, or that our grandparents hadn't been told anything. He was furious when he found out. I don't know what exactly he said to her, but I do know that after he spoke to her, she didn't come around for a while. When she did, she was noticeably quieter, though still just as irritating as ever. The entire experience just reinforced what my sisters and I had known for years. Big Peach wasn't looking out for my dad. She was looking out for herself. She wanted to control the situation, play the role of the perfect partner, and make sure that no one else got credit for helping him. But at the end of the day, she couldn't keep up the act. When it became clear that real work was required actual care, not just putting on a show, she bailed. Dad's recovery was slow, but eventually, he got back on his feet. He's still with Big Peach, unfortunately, but my sisters and I have set some hard boundaries. We don't trust her, we don't rely on her, and we certainly don't let her control access to our father again. If she ever tries anything like that again, she'll find out just how little patience we have left for her nonsense.